The energy harvester's first contact. The quantum drive hummed its final notes as Naira's ship settled into Earth's orbit. Her crystalline skin flickered with desperate hunger, casting purple shadows across the ship's organic console. 3 solar cycles without feeding had left her dangerously weak, but she had no choice. Her home world was dying, its energy sources depleted by centuries of consumption. Earth glowed beneath her, a beacon of raw, untapped life force. The scanners showed billions of energy signatures, each one burning brighter than anything she'd seen in decades. Her people, the Vaskari, had avoided this system for generations, marking it as too dangerous to harvest. But desperate times had forced desperate measures. Naira's translator implant processed the planet's communication channels, feeding her languages, cultural contexts, and behavioral patterns. She would need to blend in, at least long enough to feed. The ship's metamorphic systems could alter her crystalline form to appear human, but maintaining the disguise would drain her already depleted reserves. Initiating landing sequence, she whispered to herself in newly learned English, testing the strange sounds on her tongue. The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, cloaking systems active, seeking an isolated landing zone. Her senses identified a remote area, mountains, forests, minimal human activity. Perfect for a hunter. The ship touched down in a clearing, reconfiguring itself into a smaller form that blended with the surrounding rocks. Naira stepped onto Earth's soil, her crystalline feet transforming into human approximations. The disguise rippled across her body, pale skin replacing translucent crystal, dark hair forming where once there were energy tendrils. Only her eyes retained a hint of their original luminescence, glowing faintly violet in the gathering dusk. The energy signatures surrounding her were intoxicating. Every plant, every insect, every small creature pulsed with life force. But they were nothing compared to what she sensed from the nearest human settlement. Each human blazed like a small sun in her perception, their energy pure and potent. Naira began walking toward the settlement, her movements still too fluid, too precise. She forced herself to adopt a more natural gait, watching her reflection in a stream to adjust her mimicry. The hunger gnawed at her core, urging her to rush, to feed immediately. But survival required patience. One wrong move, one suspicious death, and she could bring unwanted attention. A sound caught her attention, an engine, approaching along the mountain road. Naira quickly adopted a hiking pose she'd absorbed from Earth's media networks, pretending to consult a map she materialized from spare energy. The vehicle, a battered green truck, rounded the bend. The truck slowed as it approached her, and Naira tensed, ready either to flee or feed. The window rolled down, revealing a human male with weather-worn features and kind eyes. His energy signature was overwhelming, strong, stable, and somehow warmer than any she'd encountered in her research. "You all right, miss?" he called out. "It's getting pretty dark for hiking, and there's rain coming in." Naira forced a smile, remembering to show teeth but not too many. "I'm afraid I've lost my way," she said, her translator making the words sound natural, if slightly accented. "Could you point me toward the nearest town?" The man frowned at the darkening sky. "That'd be Miller's Peak, about 8 miles up the road. Look, I don't mean to overstep, but I've got a wildlife sanctuary just a couple miles from here. We've got a visitor center with a phone if you need to call someone." Every instinct Naira possessed screamed at her to accept. Here was a perfect opportunity, an isolated location, a single human, enough energy to sustain her for months. Yet something in his genuine concern gave her pause. In all her studies of potential harvest worlds, she'd never encountered a species that offered help to strangers without expecting compensation. "I wouldn't want to impose," she said, testing his reaction. The man smiled, and his energy signature pulsed with something she couldn't quite identify. Not fear, not hunger, not aggression. No imposition at all. "I'm Jake, by the way. Jake Morrison. Can't leave someone stranded out here in good conscience." Naira hesitated one moment longer, then nodded. "Thank you. I'm Nina," she said, choosing a name from her database of human designations. She climbed into the truck, immediately overwhelmed by Jake's proximity. His energy field brushed against her senses like warm sunlight, making it hard to concentrate on anything else. "So, Nina, where are you from?" Jake asked as he drove, seeming genuinely curious. "Your accent is interesting." "Northern Europe," Nora replied, using her prepared cover story. "I'm traveling, studying different ecosystems." It wasn't entirely a lie. She was studying Earth's life forms, just not for the purposes she'd implied. "A scientist? That's fantastic. We get researchers at the sanctuary sometimes, studying the local wildlife. What's your specific field?" Nira shifted slightly, her disguise rippling almost imperceptibly. "Energy patterns in living systems." Again, not technically a lie. Jake's eyes lit up. "Like bioluminescence? We've got some fascinating cave systems near here with organisms that produce their own light. I could show you tomorrow if you're interested." His enthusiasm was disarming, making it harder for Nira to think of him as mere sustenance. She found herself genuinely curious about these light-producing organisms. "I would like that," she said softly, surprised to realize she meant it. The truck turned onto a narrow drive marked with a wooden sign, "Morrison Wildlife Sanctuary, all species welcome." As they approached a cluster of buildings, Nira sensed more energy signatures, animals of various sizes, each with its own unique pattern. But it was the way they interacted with Jake's energy that fascinated her. Instead of fear or predatory intent, there was a harmony she'd never encountered before. "Home sweet home," Jake announced, parking near a rustic building with warm light spilling from its windows. "We can get you set up in the visitor center guest room. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable." Nira stepped out of the truck, her hum momentarily forgotten as she absorbed the sanctuary's unique energy pattern. Here was something worth studying before she fed. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to learn about this species and simply how to harvest them efficiently. Little did she know, this decision would change not only her fate, but that of 2 civilizations. The unexpected sanctuary. The guest room was simple but comfortable, just as Jake had promised. Nira sat on the bed's edge, her crystalline form fighting against her human disguise as exhaustion set in. Maintaining the illusion was draining her faster than she'd calculated. Soon, she would have to feed or risk reverting to her natural state. Through the walls, she sensed Jake's energy signature moving around the sanctuary, checking on his charges before retiring for the night. Each interaction revealed something new. The way animals responded to his presence with trust rather than fear, how his own energy seemed to strengthen theirs rather than diminish it. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Nina? I've got some soup if you're hungry," Jake called out. Nora quickly reinforced her disguise. "Come in," she managed, curious about this human ritual of sharing sustenance. Jake entered carrying a tray with a steaming bowl and what her database identified as herbal tea. His energy signature carried that same inexplicable warmth she'd noticed earlier. "You looked cold earlier," he said, setting the tray down. "This should help." She mimicked the human eating motions she'd studied, surprised to find the experience not unpleasant. The soup's warmth spread through her borrowed form differently than absorbed energy, gentler somehow. "Thank you," she said, meaning it. "Your sanctuary, it's not what I expected." Jake settled into a chair nearby, his expression thoughtful. "What did you expect?" "Cages, control. But the animals here, they seemed," she searched for the right word, "free." "That's the whole point," Jake smiled. "We're not here to control them. We help them heal, then return them to the wild when they're ready. Those that can't survive in the wild anymore stay on as permanent residents, like family." Family. The concept existed among her people, but only as genetic lineage tracking. Nothing like the warm resonance she felt in Jake's energy when he spoke the word. "Tomorrow I can show you around properly," he continued. "We've got some interesting cases right now. A wolf recovering from a leg injury, a pair of orphaned mountain lion cubs. even a golden eagle with a damaged wing. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why expend resources on creatures that offer no benefit to you? Instead of taking offense, Jake looked thoughtful. Because they're living beings who need help. Isn't that benefit enough? Nira stared at him, genuinely confused. Among her people, every interaction was calculated for energy gain. The idea of helping without expectation of return was alien to her. Besides, Jake added with a slight grin, who says they offer no benefit. The wolf pack we rehabilitated last year now helps keep the deer population in check, which protects the local vegetation. The eagles hunt rodents that would otherwise damage crops. Everything's connected. Connected. Yes, she could sense it now. The intricate web of energy flowing between all living things in the sanctuary. Different from her people's hierarchical feeding patterns, this was more like harmony. Get some rest, Jake said, standing. Dawn comes early here. That night, Nira lay awake, her hunger warring with newfound curiosity. She could easily feed on Jake now, drain his abundant energy and move on to the next human settlement. It would be simple, efficient, logical, yet something held her back. Morning brought new revelations. Jake took her on a tour of the sanctuary, introducing her to each resident. The injured wolf regarded her with knowing eyes, its energy signature shifting defensively. Animals, she realized, could sense what she was despite her disguise. Here's our newest arrival, Jake said, leading her to a small enclosure. Inside, a mountain lion cub lay curled up, its life force flickering weakly. Found her yesterday, severely dehydrated. Her mother was killed by poachers. Without thinking, Nira reached out with her energy sense. The cub's pattern was failing, its light dimming. Among her people, such weakness would mean abandonment. But Jake's energy was already flowing toward the cub, strengthening its fading spark. Can I? Nira hesitated, then stepped closer. Instead of feeding, she tried something new, attempting to mimic Jake's energy pattern. To her surprise, she found she could share her own energy rather than absorb it, supporting the cub's fading system. The cub's eyes opened, and its energy signature brightened slightly. Jake watched in amazement as the cub's vital signs stabilized on the monitoring equipment. That's incredible, he breathed. Her readings just improved dramatically. What did you do? Nira withdrew her energy quickly, alarmed by her own actions. Nothing. Perhaps your treatments are working. But Jake was looking at her differently now, his head tilted in consideration. You know, when you work with animals long enough, you develop a sense for them, their moods, their needs. And you, Nina, you're different. Fear spiked through her. Had she revealed too much? Different. The animals react to you unlike anyone I've ever seen. That wolf earlier, he was cautious but not afraid. And now this. He gestured to the strengthened cub. It's like you have some kind of connection with them. Nira's disguise flickered slightly, her controls slipping. She needed to feed soon, but the thought brought less satisfaction than before. Perhaps I should go, she said, turning toward the door. Jake caught her arm gently, and the contact sent a surge of energy through her that had nothing to do with feeding. Hey, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Whatever your secret is, it's safe here. This sanctuary exists to protect all beings, no questions asked. His sincerity radiated through his energy signature, impossible to doubt. Nira found herself at a crossroads. She could flee, find easier prey elsewhere. Or she could stay, learn more about this human who challenged everything she thought she knew about energy and life. The cub, she said finally. Will she survive? Jake smiled, relief evident in his expression. With help, yes. Would you like to assist with her recovery? Nara looked at the sleeping cub, then at Jake's outstretched hand. Perhaps there was more than one way to sustain oneself. Yes, she said. I would like that very much. As they worked together through the morning, Nira began to understand that she had discovered something far more valuable than a simple feeding ground. She had found a place where energy flowed freely, given rather than taken. A sanctuary in every sense of the word. But as the sun climbed higher, she sensed a familiar disturbance in the upper atmosphere. Her ship's sensors were detecting something that made her blood run cold. She wasn't the only one of her kind who had discovered Earth. The real test of sanctuary was about to begin, learning to trust. The disturbance in the atmosphere grew stronger over the next few days, but Nera forced herself to focus on the immediate challenge, surviving without feeding. Each morning, she worked alongside Jake at the sanctuary, learning to channel her energy in ways her people had never imagined possible. The mountain lion cub, whom Jake had named Luna, was growing stronger. Instead of draining energy, Nera found she could create a resonance between her own energy field and the cub's, supporting its natural healing process. The effort left her drained, but brought a satisfaction she'd never known before. "You have a gift," Jake said one afternoon, watching her work with Luna. The cub now actively sought out Nera's presence, purring contentedly when she was near. "I've never seen anyone connect with animals quite like you do." Nera's hands trembled slightly as she stroked Luna's fur. The strain of maintaining her human form while experimenting with energy sharing was taking its toll. "They trust you more," she deflected, but her voice wavered. Jake set down the medical charts he was reviewing. "Nana, you're exhausted. You've been working non-stop for days. When was the last time you ate?" If only he knew how complex that question was. "I'm fine," she insisted, but as she stood, her disguise flickered noticeably. For a split second, her skin crystallized, revealing her true nature. Jake blinked, then rubbed his eyes. "Must have been a trick of the light," he muttered, but Nera saw the doubt in his expression. That evening, as she helped Jake prepare dinner in the sanctuary's small kitchen, her weakness became impossible to hide. Her hands passed right through the vegetables she was attempting to chop, her form becoming temporarily intangible. "Okay," Jake said quietly, setting down his knife. "I think it's time we talked about what's really going on." Nora backed away, her heart racing. "I should leave." "Should you?" Jake's voice remained calm, his energy signature steady and unthreatening. "Because from what I've seen, you've done nothing but help since you arrived. Whatever you are, wherever you're from, that matters more to me than any secret you're keeping." The kindness in his voice broke something inside her. Her disguise fell away completely, leaving her in her natural form, crystalline skin refracting the kitchen's warm light, energy tendrils where hair should be, violet eyes glowing softly. Jake's breath caught, but he didn't run. Instead, he stepped closer, wonder replacing fear in his energy signature. "You're beautiful," he whispered. Naira's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "I'm a predator," she corrected him. "My people feed on energy, life force. That's why I came to Earth." "To feed on humans." She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "But I haven't. I couldn't. Not after seeing how you help others, how you give freely without taking." Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing. "You've been starving yourself," he realized. "That's why you're getting weaker. The work with Luna, sharing energy instead of taking it. It goes against everything I was taught," Nara admitted. "My people believe strength comes from consuming others' energy. But here, with you," she gestured around the sanctuary, "I've seen a different kind of strength." Before Jake could respond, a sharp pain lanced through Nara's head. The atmospheric disturbance had intensified. She could sense them now, 3 Vascari ships entering Earth's orbit. Hunters, drawn by the same energy signatures that had attracted her. "They're coming," she gasped, stumbling. Jake caught her before she could fall, and the contact sent a surge of energy through her system. But unlike before, it wasn't hunger she felt. It was something deeper, more profound. "Who's coming?" Jake's arms steadied her, his concern evident in both his voice and his energy signature. "My people. Hunters. They'll drain this entire area, killing everything." The thought of the sanctuary's residents, of Jake, having their energy harvested made her physically ill. "I have to stop them." "We'll stop them," Jake corrected. But first, you need strength. He held out his hand, palm up. Take what you need. Nira stared at him in shock. You don't understand. Feeding, it could kill you. Jake smiled, his energy signature pulsing with trust. You've proved over the past days that you can share energy without harming. I trust you, Nira. She hadn't told him her real name. How? You talk in your sleep, he said softly, in a language like crystal chimes. Slowly, trembling, Nira placed her hand in his. Instead of draining his energy, she opened herself to it, allowing it to flow naturally between them. The sensation was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, not feeding but sharing. Strength flowed into her, but Jake's energy remained constant, as if his capacity for giving was endless. When she tried to pull away, Jake tightened his grip slightly. Your people, he said, can they all share energy like this? No, Nira realized. We never tried. We only took. Then maybe that's what we can teach them. Jake's eyes met hers, filled with determination. You're not the only one who can adapt, who can learn a better way. The hunters would arrive within hours. Nira knew she should be terrified, but with Jake's hand in hers and his energy freely shared, she felt something new, hope. There's something else you should know, she said, strengthened by their connection. Humans aren't just energy sources. Your capacity for sharing, for giving without depleting yourselves, it's unique in the galaxy. You're not prey. You're the most powerful species I've ever encountered. Jake's energy signature flickered with surprise, then understanding. Then let's use that power to save both our peoples. Outside, Luna's cry echoed across the sanctuary, joined by the wolf's howl and the eagle's screech. The animals sensed what was coming, but for the first time in her life, Nira didn't face the coming battle alone. She had found something worth fighting for, not just survival, but a new way of living. And she would defend it with everything she had learned about the true nature of strength. The hunt begins. The night sky above the sanctuary blazed with otherworldly lights as 3 Vascari ships breached Earth's atmosphere. Their crystalline forms, similar to Nira's natural state but twisted into predatory shapes, reflected the moonlight like shattered mirrors. We need to evacuate the sanctuary, Nira said, her newly strengthened form humming with shared energy. The hunters will drain everything in their path. Jake was already moving, activating the sanctuary's emergency protocols. The underground bunker system, he said, pulling up blueprints on his tablet. We built it for forest fires, but it should shield the animals' energy signatures. Nora touched the screen, her crystalline fingers interfacing with the technology. Yes, the mineral composition will mask life force readings, but you need to go too. Not happening. Jake's energy signature pulsed with determination. This is my home. These animals are my responsibility. Before Nara could argue, a piercing tone cut through the air. Her ship's warning system. She closed her eyes, accessing the sensor data. 3 hunters. Elite class. There. Her eyes snapped open. They're heading straight for the nearest town. Jake's face hardened. Miller's Peak. There's over 2,000 people there. They'll feed on the entire population in minutes. Nora's voice shook. I can't stop 3 elite hunters alone. You're not alone. Jake grabbed his emergency radio. Remember what you said about humans being powerful? Well, we're about to prove it. He keyed the radio. Morrison Sanctuary to Miller's Peak Emergency Services. Code Omega. I repeat, Code Omega. This is not a drill. To Nira's surprise, a calm voice responded immediately. Copy that, Morrison. Omega protocols initiated. All residents moving to shelter positions. Defense teams deploying. Jake caught Nira's confused look. After the first alien encounters in the 50s, every town in this region built emergency bunkers. Most people think they're just fallout shelters now, but some of us know better. We've been preparing for something like this for generations. A series of deep tones echoed across the valley as Miller's Peak's warning system activated. Nura watched in amazement as lights throughout the town systematically went dark, energy signatures disappearing underground. That won't fool the hunters for long, she warned. They'll sense the concentrated energy below. It doesn't need to fool them forever. Jake was already moving to his truck, grabbing equipment. It just needs to buy us time to set a trap. The first hunter ship landed at the edge of town, its crystalline form unfolding like a deadly flower. Two figures emerged, their forms similar to Nura's true shape, but corrupted by centuries of violent energy consumption. Nura, daughter of the High Absorber, one called out in their native tongue. We sensed your presence. Have you prepared this feeding ground for the Empire? Nura stepped forward, her form glowing with the clean energy Jake had shared. This is not a feeding ground, Vorkath. These beings are not prey. The second hunter laughed, the sound like breaking glass. You've gone native, little princess. Corrupted by lesser beings. His form shifted, energy tendrils writhing. No matter. We'll cleanse you along with this infection. The third ship landed behind them, completing their hunting formation. Nura recognized the last hunter, Sindar, her former combat instructor. His energy signature radiated cold contempt. Disappointing, Sindar said. You showed such promise. Now look at you, defending cattle. Jake's voice cut through the darkness. We're not cattle. He stepped forward, joined by several figures emerging from the shadows. Each carried what looked like modified mining equipment. We're the apex predators of this planet, and you're trespassing. The hunter's energy signatures pulsed with amusement. Vorkath raised a crystalline arm, preparing to feed, only to stagger as a focused beam of energy struck his form. Electromagnetic pulse generators, Jake explained, hefting his device. Turns out your crystalline forms are susceptible to the right frequency. More beams joined the first as hidden defense teams activated their weapons. The hunters' forms distorted, their energy absorption abilities disrupted. Impossible, Sindar snarled. Primitive beings cannot possess such technology. We learned, Jake said simply. Every UFO sighting, every unexplained cattle mutilation, we studied them all. Prepared, evolved. Nura stretched out her senses, feeling the complex web of energy flowing through the valley. The animals in their sanctuary bunker, the humans hidden underground, Jake and his defense teams, all connected, all supporting each other. There's a better way, she called to her people. They can teach us to share energy, to thrive without consuming. Look. She demonstrated, channeling energy between herself and Jake, showing how it strengthened both of them. For a moment, she saw uncertainty flicker in Vorkath's energy signature. But Sindar had seen enough. With a crystalline screech, he launched himself at Jake, energy tendrils extended to feed. Nura moved faster than thought, intercepting her former mentor. Their crystalline forms clashed with a sound like thunder, energy fields colliding in a spectacular display. Now, Jake shouted. The defense teams fired in unison, their pulses combining into a single devastating wave. Vorkath's form shattered instantly. The second hunter tried to retreat to his ship, but was caught in the cascade. Sindar, locked in combat with Nura, screamed in rage. You betray your own kind for these insects. No, Nura said, her form blazing with shared power. I evolve, as all species must. She pulled back her energy field, leaving him exposed to the pulse wave. I choose life over consumption, growth over parasitism. The combined pulse struck Sindar, his crystalline form fragmenting. But before he dissolved completely, Nura saw something in his energy signature, a flicker of understanding, of recognition that perhaps their way wasn't the only path. As the hunters' ships crumbled, their energy dispersing harmlessly into the atmosphere, Jake approached Nura. Are you okay? She turned to him, her form slowly settling. They'll send more. And we'll be ready. Jake's hand found hers, energy flowing freely between them. Together. Above them, dawn was breaking over Miller's Peak. People were emerging from their shelters, their energy signatures bright with triumph and wonder. Naira looked at Jake, at the town, at the sanctuary where Luna and the others waited. She had come to Earth as a hunter, but found something far more precious, a home worth protecting, and a new understanding of true strength. The real challenge lay ahead, helping both their species evolve beyond the hunter-prey relationship. But as she felt Jake's energy harmonize with hers, Naira knew they would find a way. After all, adaptation was what living things did best. Humanity's stand. News of the hunter's defeat spread quickly through both Earth's defense networks and the Vascari Empire's quantum channels. Within days, the sanctuary became the center of an unprecedented diplomatic crisis. Military vehicles patrolled the perimeter while government officials argued over jurisdiction. Above, more Vascari ships gathered in high orbit, their crystalline forms visible even in daylight. 7 ships now, Naira reported, monitoring the situation through her connection with her own vessel's sensors. She stood with Jake on the sanctuary's observation deck, watching uniformed personnel set up defensive positions, including the High Absorber's personal transport. Jake's hand tightened around hers. "Your father. The emperor of my people," she corrected. "We don't acknowledge family bonds the way humans do. Or at least we didn't." She looked at him meaningfully. Their energy connection had grown stronger each day, becoming something her people had no words for. A commotion at the main gate drew their attention. A convoy of black vehicles approached, led by a sleek helicopter. "The president's envoy," Jake explained. "Looks like things are about to get official." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The sanctuary's main conference room, usually used for veterinary consultations, became an impromptu war room. Military generals sat alongside wildlife conservation officials, while diplomats argued with scientists about first contact protocols. "The Vascari won't negotiate conventionally," Naira explained to the assembled humans. "They see diplomatic overtures as weakness, an invitation to feed." "Then we show strength," declared General Chen, studying tactical displays. "We have planetary defense systems ready to deploy." "With respect, General," Jake interrupted, "fighting isn't the answer. Naira, show them what you showed me." Naira nodded and stepped forward. Her crystalline form shifted, creating a holographic display of energy patterns. "My people evolved as energy parasites, but we've discovered something extraordinary here. Humans don't just generate energy, you amplify it through connection." She demonstrated, sharing energy with Jake. The monitoring equipment the scientists had set up registered the exchange, showing how both their energy levels increased rather than one depleting the other. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Rodriguez, the lead xenobiologist. "This violates conservation of energy." "No," Naira corrected. "It transcends your current understanding of it. Humans have developed something unique in the galaxy, symbiotic energy generation. You strengthen each other naturally without even realizing it." A young diplomat raised her hand. "Like how being in love makes people feel more energetic, or how crowds at concerts seem to feed off each other's excitement." "Exactly," Naira confirmed. "What my people take by force, humans generate freely through connection. It's why this sanctuary works. Jake doesn't just care for injured animals, he strengthens them through genuine compassion." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared. Above, the Vascari ships were moving into attack formation. "Multiple quantum signatures detecting," called out a technician. "They're preparing to launch harvester pods." General Chen reached for his phone, ready to authorize planetary defenses, but Jake held up his hand. "Wait. Naira, you said the High Absorber is up there." She nodded. "My father won't authorize a full attack without assessing the situation himself. He's—" "Right here," came the voice like crystal wind chimes. Everyone turned. In the doorway stood a being of pure crystalline energy, his form so bright it hurt to look at directly. The High Absorber had teleported past all their defenses. Guards raised weapons, but with a gesture, the High Absorber rendered them immobile. Fascinating, he said, examining the frozen humans. Such potent energy, yet they waste it on protecting others. That's why they're strong. Nora moved to stand between her father and Jake. What you see as waste is actually growth. The high absorber's form shifted, expressing something between amusement and contempt. You were always too curious for your own good, daughter. These humans have corrupted your understanding of natural law. The strong feed on the weak. This is the way of the universe. No, Jake's voice rang out. Somehow, he broke free of the paralysis. That's the way of parasites. Life, real life, grows stronger through cooperation. The high absorber turned his full attention to Jake, energy tendrils writhing. You dare lecture me, pray? I dare to show you a better way. Jake stepped forward, his energy signature blazing with something that made even the high absorber pause. Your entire civilization is built on consumption, but you're starving and don't even know it. To everyone's shock, Jake held out his hand to the crystalline emperor. Let me show you what real strength feels like. The high absorber laughed, the sound shattering windows. You offer yourself freely, then you are even more foolish than my daughter. But when he reached out to feed, something extraordinary happened. Instead of draining Jake's energy, the connection flowed both ways. The high absorber's form flared with unexpected radiance. What is this? For the first time in millennia, the Emperor of the Vaskari sounded uncertain. This is humanity, Nira said softly, adding her energy to the exchange. This is what we could become. Other humans in the room began breaking free of their paralysis, drawn to the energy nexus forming. Each person who joined strengthened the whole, creating a luminescence that outshone even the high absorber's natural form. Through their connected energy fields, understanding flowed. The high absorber saw millennia of his people's history from a new perspective, not a story of successful predation, but of growing isolation and diminishing returns. He saw what the Vaskari had lost in their pursuit of power through consumption. And he saw the potential for change. The light show lasted only minutes, but its effects would echo through galaxies. When it ended, the high absorber's form had changed, becoming less jagged, more harmonious. Perhaps, he said slowly, it is time for the Vaskari to evolve. Above, the attack fleet powered down their weapons. On Earth, humans and crystalline beings stood together, glimpsing a future neither species had imagined possible. But in the sanctuary's recovery ward, Luna the mountain lion cub purred contentedly, having known all along what the others were just discovering, that the strongest bonds are those freely given, and the greatest power comes from connection. A new dawn. 1 year later, the Morrison Wildlife Sanctuary had transformed. Crystalline structures now grew alongside the original buildings, their forms designed to amplify and channel the natural energy flows of the environment. Humans and Vaskari worked side by side, learning from each other as they cared for Earth's creatures. Nura stood in the new healing chamber, her crystalline form resonating with the combined energy signatures of dozens of species. Luna, now fully grown, lounged nearby, occasionally flicking her tail at passing energy currents. The mountain lion had become something of a mascot for the sanctuary's evolution. The Australian sanctuary just came online, Jake announced, entering the chamber. His energy signature, now permanently enhanced by regular connection with Nira, lit up the space. That makes 17 global centers for human Vaskari cooperation. Nira smiled, the expression now natural after months of practice. And the healing rates? Off the charts. Turns out combining your people's energy manipulation with our wildlife rehabilitation techniques works better than either approach alone. He showed her the latest data on his tablet. We're successfully treating conditions that were once considered fatal. The tablet displayed images from sanctuaries around the world. In Africa, crystalline beings worked with human rangers to protect endangered species, their energy fields deterring poachers and strengthening weakened animal populations. In the Amazon, a joint team had developed ways to accelerate rainforest regeneration through targeted energy enhancement. The High Absorber's latest report just came in too, Jake continued. The first generation of Vaskari born after the change is showing remarkable differences. Nura accessed the quantum data stream, her form brightening with joy as she processed the information. The children of her people, raised on shared energy rather than consumption, were developing abilities no one had thought possible. They could generate their own sustainable energy fields, create rather than merely consume. They're calling it the Great Awakening, she said softly. After 50,000 years of being parasites, we're finally becoming something new. Jake's hand found hers, their energy fields merging with practiced ease. You started all this, by choosing not to feed that first night. No, Naira corrected him. You started it by offering help to a stranger in the woods, by showing me there was another way to live. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the sanctuary's perimeter sensors. A new group of visitors had arrived, another batch of Vaskari youth, come to learn the art of energy sharing from Earth's master practitioners. Through the healing chamber's crystal walls, Nero watched the young ones arrive. Their forms were different from traditional Vaskari, smoother, more harmonious, already adapted to work with rather than against other life forms. Among them walked human students, their natural energy abilities now consciously developed and controlled. Sometimes I wonder, Jake mused, what would have happened if your people had found Earth a century ago, before we were ready? Nira shuddered slightly. We would have consumed everything, never knowing what we were destroying, never discovering what we could become. Instead, both our species evolved. Jake gestured to where Luna was allowing a young Vaskari to practice energy sharing, the big cat's patient presence helping the crystal child learn control. Now we're stronger together than either of us could have been alone. A soft chime indicated an incoming quantum transmission. The high absorber's image, formed in the center of the chamber, is once harsh crystalline form, now radiating serene power. Daughter, he greeted Nero warmly, another change from the old ways. The council has reached a decision about the deep space anomalies. Nero straightened. The recent discovery of energy-consuming entities in distant galaxies had raised concerns about other predatory species following the Vaskari's old path. We vote to establish contact, the High Absorber continued, to offer them the same choice you offered us, a chance to evolve beyond consumption into true symbiosis. The sanctuaries will support the mission, Jake added. Earth's experience with your people makes us uniquely qualified to help others make the transition. Nira felt a surge of pride, not the old pride of domination, but something deeper. Pride in how far both their species had come, and excitement for the journey ahead. Later that evening, as Earth's sun set and the sanctuary's crystalline structures caught the fading light, Nara and Jake stood on their favorite observation point. Luna sprawled nearby, her energy signature contentedly intertwined with the forest's natural flows. Ready for the next adventure? Jake asked, his energy field dancing playfully with hers. Nara looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, other beings waited to learn what she had discovered on Earth. That true strength comes not from taking, but from sharing. That evolution favors cooperation over consumption. That love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force in the universe. Ready, she replied, squeezing his hand. Above them, the first stars began to appear, no longer distant hunting grounds, but beacons of possibility. Earth had changed the Vaskari, but humanity had changed too, growing into its role as the galaxy's teachers of symbiosis. And in the Morrison Wildlife Sanctuary, where it all began, new generations of both species continued to learn the most important lesson of all, that the greatest power comes not from what you take, but from what you give freely. The end.